Okay, hey everybody. Given this speech, I'm going to read this because there's a lot to go through. But given this speech, because for many years I've been discussing trapping with people from all walks of life and political leanings, many of you already have got strong opinions on trapping, and I'm not here to sway you to either side. I just will, however, give you a lot of the true statistics about trapping that have never been out in the public. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm not some keyboard tough guy, a real person. My name is Ryan Dipshinsky. I'm 45 years old at the time of this recording, however long it stays on the internet. I've trapped since I was 3 turning 4, 4 turning 5, so it's a long time ago. I don't remember the exact age, but either way, I've been trapping for about 40 years now. Received my diploma in natural resource management technology as well as wildlife technician from the North American Wildlife Technology Association. I work with the Manitoba Department of Natural Resources as an enforcement officer as well as initial attack forest firefighter. I'm also a Saskatchewan certified trapping instructor. I've been giving trapping seminars and demonstrations throughout Western Canada and Northern United States. Presently, I'm the media relations coordinator of the Saskatchewan Trappers Association. I worked many years in the oil and gas fields of Western Canada. I also guide hunters for spring bear. Presently, I've got a logging and sawmilling operation. So I'm basically the big bad boogeyman that the anti-everything crowd hates. I don't hide behind a keyboard. I don't threaten anybody. I don't name call. And I definitely don't hide the fact that I'm a proud trapper. Okay, first thing that I want to make clear is that this is actual science and truth, so it doesn't fit into nice little sound bites or slogans. Wildlife management is complicated, with many variables and things to consider. It'll take years of experience and training to understand. I still got tons to learn, but if you're serious about learning about some trapping, I invite you to watch and listen in for the next few minutes. I'll do my best to help you understand what trapping is about and why it's not bad and why it's needed. The biggest argument the anti-trapping crowd has is that we are needlessly killing animals that would otherwise be living wonderful, peaceful, happy-go-lucky lives. Unfortunately, this couldn't be further from the truth. All species of animals produce more offspring that's required to sustain the population. This is due to many factors: disease, starvation, predation, hunting, roadkill, and any other reason animals die. Most wild animals don't live to see their first birthday. It's an ugly reality, but it's true. The smaller the animal, the lower the lifespan, or the lower the time. If animals aren't trapped and left alone, you'll find that populations have sharp peaks and valleys. It's not very stable. This is caused when the animals overpopulate and they'll die off from disease or starvation. Food sources will get depleted because of high density, diseases spread quickly, and it's followed by very low population where very few animals survive, and it takes many years for the population to rebound, only to get to that tipping point again and have that mass die off. Trapping kind of evens out those cycles. If an area is trapped year after year, population is kept in balance and the peaks and valleys are pretty much diminished. Basically, if you want animals to be there every year, trap them. If you don't want to be overrun by a species, or on the other hand, never see one, then don't trap. That happens in a lot of species. And because animals produce more than are needed, trappers can take the surplus. Now you're thinking, oh, if trappers take the surplus and the usual factors kill animals, there won't be any left. Again, that's wrong. These factors still occur, but at a much, much reduced rate. The carrying capacity of a habitat is calculated by the number of animals in an area right before the young of the year are born. Basically, doesn't matter what animal it is, right when they're being born in the spring, the day before that, that's the carrying capacity. That's all that the habitat could survive that year. And that changes from year to year and, from location to location. During birthing, the population dramatically rises, and throughout the year it's diminished until the carrying capacity is reached right before the next birthing cycle. That cycle occurs every year regardless of trapping. Now, trappers take some of the surplus, that's all though. Everybody knows and sees deer in the wild, so I'll use them as an example. If deer aren't hunted, the number of roadkills increase, diseases occur, the population of predators increase. The population keeps growing till a tipping point is reached and either food sources become depleted or disease spreads through them. Then the crash occurs. But not only the deer, the predator population crashes because of starvation. Vegetation that was once overgrazed now grows profusely. Mice numbers increase because of a lack of predators and an oversupply of food. And eventually the deer numbers begin to increase. This cycle repeats over and over. Now, hunters annually hunt deer, and the dramatic peaks and valleys don't occur. There's still plenty of deer for the predator to survive, vegetation doesn't get depleted, mouse populations don't explode, etc., etc. This is all due to the deer hunters in North America. Now, just to give everyone an idea of what size of harvest is required each year to prevent those huge peaks and valleys, over 6 million deer are harvested by hunters every year in the United States alone. 6 million deer. Let that thing just sink in for a second. If someone said 6 million animals were going to be killed in 1 year, the entire planet would be in an uproar, yet it occurs every single year. And the best part, we've been doing this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and the deer population is alive and healthy, and most of all, sustainable. Trappers do the exact same thing, no difference. Animal populations are very resilient and can handle harvests every year. I use deer as an example because everybody understands them and sees them. All the animal rights people see them, the hunters see them, and everybody in North America is familiar with deer. So they're a great example of sustainable wildlife population. Now, to get into a little bit of the science, anybody who's ever studied statistics will understand this. There's a lot of math involved, but I'll just simplify it. So if you have a jar of jelly beans, in that jar there's about 100 red jelly beans and 100 green jelly beans. Mix them up, blindly reach into the jar. What are your chances of pulling out a green jelly bean? 50-50. So if you want only green jelly beans, you have a 50% chance of getting one. So let's say your first pick, you go in and, oh, it's a red jelly bean. You return it, your chances are still 50-50. Now you go in again, you pick the next one's green. So you eat the green one. Now there's 100 red, 99 green. So the odds are slightly tipped that there's a higher chance of grabbing a red jelly bean than a green one. So let's say you keep reaching in and removing only the green ones while replacing the red ones until you've eaten 50 of the green jelly beans. Now there's 100 red and 50 green, which gives you a 33% chance of picking a green one, and so on and so on and so on. So how does this apply to trapping? Well, it's real simple. The number of green jelly beans represents the animals caught in a trap. The red jelly beans represent the empty traps. Traps that were set but didn't catch anything. I know I'm the only one on the internet who ever sets a trap and doesn't catch anything, according to everybody else, but yeah, we all have empty traps. So, the red jelly beans represent the empty traps, and excuse me, each pick represents a trap that's set and that you've checked. So when you first go out to an area and you set your traps, you have a good chance of picking a green jelly bean or making a catch. As you continue to remove animals, your success rate falls and falls until you catch very little or nothing. There's still animals in the area, but, hence the green jelly beans in the bowl, but your time and effort required to catch an animal now makes it unproductive to continue. So at that point, trappers either move to a new area or finish up for the year. Trappers like bragging about big catches, and the anti-fur people use those examples of man taking too many animals. Truth lies in the middle. Those are new lines with lots of green jelly beans, so to speak. Yes, if that level of harvest was continued, it would detrimentally harm the population, but as we learned with the jelly beans, you cannot break the law of averages and make those catches day after day after day. So what does this all mean? Trappers cannot take every single animal, even if they wanted to. The untrapped animals beside the area that you're not trapping will begin to immigrate to the area vacated by the trapped animals because there's less competition for food and space. So trappers will never trap every animal. Also, we have seasons. You're only allowed to trap in this particular time, so we can't keep going and going and going, which I'm going to get to later about some wolves. So in years of low population caused by another factor such as the disease or hard climate or whatever, a trapper comes into an area and now say there's 100 red jelly beans and 30 green jelly beans. Well, right off the start, you're going to see the catches aren't there and you're going to move to another area or stop for the season. Okay, so it's a very long explanation needed for the public to just kind of understand how trappers and hunters can't really hurt the population. Now here you bring up examples like the rhino or tiger that have been hunted to or near extinction. Those examples aren't quite the same. Those animal populations have never been harvested at all until sustainable population exists. One poached rhino, the money the guy makes will feed his family for, a third world country for a year. If you're seeing your family starve to death and there's a rhino right out there and you know you could do something by killing that rhino, I understand the temptation. I don't agree with it, don't condone poaching of any kind, but I understand why it happens. It's not right, but that's why it happens. So it doesn't make it right. No hunter, fisherman, and especially trapper ever want to see a single species of wildlife threatened go extinct. Period. It just doesn't happen. Outdoorsmen contribute billions of dollars annually to habitat enhancement, sound wildlife conservation goals, so all users will have wildlife for all time. Again, the deer example, 6 million deer killed annually and everyone has deer. That's the goal. So the next issue is that trappers cause unneeded stress and suffering to animals. First of all, I want to ask you truthfully, ask yourself, do you really think hundreds of thousands of trappers collectively want to see any animal suffer? The answer is a resounding no. Nobody ever wants to see any animal suffer, especially by their own actions. Using deer again as an example, have you ever seen a deer hit by a vehicle and wounded laying in the ditch? If so, what was your first instinct? Help it? Some people say to put the deer down to alleviate its suffering. Some say take it to the vet and have it taken care of. Truth is, most people opt to put the animal down. Most injuries are too major for a recovery to take place, and death almost certainly follows. Wild animals don't do well in captivity, especially when they're injured, and they typically die anyway. And what about the cost? Who's responsible to pay for the health care of the deer injuries? There's many variables to consider when confronted with that situation, but in most cases, the best thing to do is put the deer down. Now, PETA's looking for something to do with their $33 million annually they collect. I offer that as a suggestion. Help injured animals back to health. That would be a noble cause that everybody could get behind rather than the way you guys behave now. Okay, so hunters know this to be true. When they take that shot on that deer, they want the bullet to kill animals fast and as humanely as possible. Trappers are absolutely no exception. In fact, trappers take more care to make sure the animals are treated as humanely as possible. Here's a fact that most people in the anti-fur don't want you to know. Those barbaric teeth with, the traps with the teeth that every kid's seen in Disney movies, been illegal for over 100 years or longer already. Those traps were used and trappers seen that they were causing harm and stress and stopped using them decades before any animal rights groups even entered the scene. Trappers did that on their own. Trap standards come a long way than what is shown in their propaganda pictures and media in general. Each jurisdiction has its own trap standards decided upon what's best in those areas. For example, if you're trapping somewhere down, say by Chicago or whatever, you could probably only use a leg hold trap there because dogs and cats and everything running around, they can be released unharmed. In some areas, only certain snares are allowed, allow deer and other wildlife to break away without any ill effects. So there's not really a set standard that'll work for someone trapping near a large urban center to someone trapping in the middle of a Canadian wilderness hundreds of miles away from people. Bottom line is trappers take great care to ensure that all the sets are humane and do not cause stress or suffering. Now here's a neat piece of information. The invention of the conibear style trap, that's the square ones, which has the highest standards of humaneness, was funded by an animal rights group based in Vancouver, Canada. In the 1930s and 40s, this group was set up to find a more humane beaver trap. Before that, all they were was leg hold traps, and the beaver was sitting there, caught in a foot. So Frank Conibear, Canadian trapper, his idea was adopted and funded by this group. The trap has been refined over the years and is by far the best trap for most of the fur-bearing animals now. And I wholeheartedly thank that group for doing this. They made it a lot better, a lot more humane. However, that wasn't funded by donations. It was funded by trappers and the government. Only after the trap had gained widespread acceptance did this group's to really change fundamentally. Since they succeeded in building a better and more humane trap, their role was finished, so we would think. However, they decided to continue on and begin to fight back at the very trappers that they helped. They began to campaign for donations and found out they needed a boogeyman to show people the evil that they were trying to stop. In turn, they began to protest against trapping, but oops, they broke the law. See, according to the law, no charity can protest something that's legal. So they were stripped of their charity status. That's why these groups are fake charities. They want everyone to believe that the public is donating to a charity, but they're not charities at all. In fact, they're for profit organizations. These people don't work. Sorry, these people that work there get their weekly paychecks from donations, and if the donations stop, well, they have to get a real job. Therefore, they need to keep the fear mongering going to keep you, the public, believing trappers are bloodthirsty killers. Now you say, come on, Ryan, that's one sided and full of it. These groups do God's work, right? Do a little research on your own there about the fur crash in the late 1980s. Greenpeace filmed an annual seal hunt. Baby harp seals, the little white guys, were killed for their meat and their fur. So images of blood-stained glaciers and ice and everything, and snows, and skin seals were in front page headlines and first up on the 6 o'clock news back then. So these images made the majority of North Americans stop purchasing fur. That was when people started painting jackets. You know, if a lady was wearing a fur coat, they'd paint it red, and on and on and on. So they won, right? Now a couple of years goes by, and darn it, no more donations are coming in. Seal hunt was banned. People moved on. So Greenpeace's brilliance, they decided they need some more footage for the seal hunt to drum up donations. So what did they do? They paid some former seal hunters who are now unemployed to go out and illegally kill seals while they filmed, all for donations. Guess who the last group was to be charged with hunting seals illegally? Greenpeace. Yep, they just had to have that boogeyman alive so they didn't have to get real jobs. That is how they run. That's how they do it. So when all the dust settles, people whose lives depended on the seal hunt and all the trappers, as a result, suffered. Well, Mother Nature took over and poof, millions of seals, which eat fish. And poof, fishing stocks on the Grand Banks depleted now. Yes, there was overfishing too, but a million extra seals out there doesn't do any good either. So now thousands of jobs are lost, billions of dollars vanish from the economy. The one thing that I've seen in all my years of trapping, if man is controlling a population sustainably, and if that stops, huge, dire consequences occur to the environment, much worse than the original issue. So that's one bad example, right? Nope. Take a look at the coyote. The coyote magically started to expand its numbers and its range right around the late 1980s. Now, coyotes occur all across North America, Central America, and into South America. So you ask, what's wrong with a success story like that? Problem is that coyotes become the top predator and has driven out the native species. Again, there's no Disney in the real world. If an animal such as a fox eats the same mouse as the coyote kills the fox. Simple survival. Millions and millions of acres of habitat have been changed because the coyote's allowed to populate so heavily now. Beavers are another great example. In the late 1980s, it became financially unviable to trap them. Beavers are rodents, and guess what rodents do? They breed. Well, they breed like a rodent. So, beavers have caused millions and millions of dollars annually to roads and infrastructure. These costs are paid by you and I, taxpayer. Trappers were sustainably harvesting beavers with no issues. And you take away the trapper, and now your pocketbook gets hit. Like I said, sustainable population managed by man becomes a bigger problem. So you ask, why since the 1980s have animal populations caused so many issues? What about thousands of years ago, when man hadn't settled North America? What kept things in balance then? Answer, wolves and bears, mainly wolves. Wolves and bears are the top predator. But when they settle in around settled areas, they become problems. Ask yourself, you're hungry, you got two choices. There's an elk right here with sharp antlers, strong hooves, and a cow in a fenced field. Which are you going to chase after? Energy spent versus energy gained, and risk versus reward factor into every single hunt a wolf undertakes. Deer, moose, elk, they kill wolves defending themselves. Cattle don't defend themselves. So wolves will eat cattle over wild deer, elk, and moose. Bears will get into garbage, grain fields, and anything else they see as food, all of which were right beside us, the humans. Settlers realized that and it was either them or the wolf. So the cattle that those settlers had, that was their food and their way to make a living. It's no different. You go to your job, and every time you go to get your paycheck, somebody takes it from you. You wouldn't be too impressed either. Settlers killed the wolves and the bears to the point there was few to none near the settled areas. Now, how can you do that, right? Remember the green jelly beans? Well, simple. The governments of the day hired trappers and hunters to kill all wolves. That was their job, kill every wolf. Thousands of men hunted wolves non-stop for decades until none remained. In modern trapping, we have seasons, in some cases quotas, so that never happens anymore. But nonetheless, bears and wolves disappeared. Reintroduction efforts have a mixed result, as right away the wolves start killing cattle again. There's no easy answer to that solution, except when you get wolves. Except to tell you that in the wolves' absence, man controlled the other species in the form of a fur trade. Remember the coyote killing the fox because of competition? Wolves do the same to coyotes. Thus, a control measure was in place. No wolves and no fur trade allowed the coyote to spread like wildfire. Beavers are preyed upon by wolves and bears. No wolves, no bears, no trappers, and poof, beavers everywhere. So now we begin the peak and the valley cycles in those species. Coyotes are a very social animal, and when a disease occurs, spreads right through the whole population. Mange was rarely ever an issue until about the 2000s in coyotes. Then all of a sudden, bang, mange everywhere. Trappers that were still trapping start seeing huge segments of the population getting mange. Mange is a parasitic mite that causes severe itching and rashes. Coyotes scratch and scratch and scratch, their fur falls out, and bare skin is left throughout their whole body. Obviously, their health deteriorates, and they eventually die a very slow death from starvation and exposure. Beaver and muskrat populations will get tularemia. This disease found in rodents spreads very quickly, just like cold or flu does around us, and it results in huge, large spread die-offs. Plus, both of these diseases can be transmitted to man and our pets. These are just a couple examples of the fallout from the lack of trapping in the 1990s and beyond. So now today, the anti-fur advocates are protesting coyote trim jackets. Seriously, has no one learned anything yet? Fortunately, the answer is no, because human emotions can be manipulated by half-truths and outright lies. Coyote numbers are higher now than ever, and a new trend has reemerged, that coyote trim parka. Anti-fur groups are protesting wearing coyote, but have absolutely no clue as to ramifications of stopping that fur from being harvested in a sustainable manner. Coyotes are one of the most resilient animals. If the food supply is low and the area is too crowded, a female will only have 1 or 2 pups. There's lots of food, lots of space, 10, 12 pups. Okay? They can sustain a much heavier harvest than what they're even experiencing now and still be overpopulated. They are very resilient. These simple facts that wildlife managers and trappers know is the reason that no amount of protesting will stop trapping. It's absolutely necessary to the overall well-being of the ecosystem. No fur-bearing animals at any time are threatened, endangered, or any way vulnerable to overharvest. Do you want proof? Trappers have been trapping here for over 300 years. Every single species populations are as high or higher than when the first settlers came to North America. We have centuries of scientific facts to back that up. Now, I understand that many people, you guys want to find a cause, and good on you for that. However, many people only see today, not tomorrow, not yesterday. No amount of protesting or donating money will change the fact that our animal populations are healthy and sustainable. Okay, this is not imminent, extinction of every animal. That's not happening at all. Okay, people have criticized me for posting a video where I caught 49 coyotes in a single day. Let me let you in a secret. I trapped that same area year after year after year, and I've taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coyotes from there. They're sustainable. I had one good catch at one day, but otherwise it's just over and over and over. You can keep trapping them, and there's always coyotes. Okay, what about that suffering though? Even though the animal populations can sustain those harvests, they're made to suffer, right? Again, it's another fallacy. Leg-hold traps must, by law, have a gap when they're fully closed. Okay, this is the modern leg-hold trap now. There's a pin. Okay, the animal's foot has a pad and has pads on the toes, and this part right here is narrow. That's exactly the amount there. It holds them there. If you look here, there's not 2 knife edges, they're fat. Okay, instead of coming together like a knife. They come together as plates. Okay, more surface area, less restriction. Okay, center swiveling, so the animal can't twist and bust its foot off or anything. When the animal pulls on it, it pulls this way, not when the chains used to be here and pull this way and cram its foot over to the edge. All these things have come into the new traps now. They are merely restraining devices. That's it. They're not hurting the animal. Okay. So those ones are used especially when there's a risk of catching non-target animals. They're just restrained. They're not hurt. Trapper checks his or her sets daily. Any non-target species like Fluffy, released unharmed. The species that are targeted, like a coyote, for example, are quickly, humanely dispatched with a gun. Many of us, don't even use those traps anymore, okay? Especially up in Canada here. We use a body grip trap, which results in an amazingly fast, humane death. In order for a trap to be legal for us to use it, it has to undergo rigorous independent testing. There's a facility in Alberta that's been set up to test traps. No trappers, no anti-fur advocates, no government agencies allowed to do these tests. It's all done by non-biased group of scientists and veterinarians that administer and oversee all the testing. Until all criteria is met, trap is not certified. Traps must come from the manufacturer and not modified in any way. This way, when a trap is certified, all those traps of the same brand, size, and configuration will pass for all trappers. And that's the only traps that are legal to be used, okay? Rarely does an industry fare better with this type of level of intervention, but in the case of trapping, we love it, okay? We know that when we go to set that trap, the animal will not suffer and the most humane treatment is given now. If you want to learn about that, there's a whole list of all the traps and a bunch of the standards and what all happens there. www.fur.ca. It's the Fur Institute of Canada. Go check their website out. I can go into it for hours, but go and check them out and you'll get an idea of what's all involved with trap testing. Okay, there's also a bunch of new snares on the market. This is the part that's going to go burst your bubble. Anyone sitting on the fence about wearing coyote parkas now. Okay, so the Ram Power Snare. It's widely used, pretty much the widely used thing to use for coyotes in Canada. It's basically a spring or a snare on a large spring. First thing they hear is snare is all this long-suffering strangulation. Couldn't be further from the truth. Power snare does not cut off any breathing. Okay, all it does is restricts the blood to the carotid arteries. What does that mean? It's a fancy way of saying a sleeper wrestling hold. You know, like when they put you to sleep. Ask anybody who's ever put in one, or do it to your buddy or whatever. It doesn't hurt. You just fall asleep. As soon as you release the hold, blood returns to the brain. You wake up unharmed, no pain. Same thing happens with the coyotes. The coyote literally falls asleep unharmed. Essentially goes unconscious. Now, instead of letting go, it keeps that blood supply cut off and a fast, humane death follows. So how does anyone know that, right? Good question. You ever had an operation? What do doctors do? Put you in an unconscious state and then they cut you open. Does it hurt? No. You don't even feel anything. It's exactly how the power snare works. Now, the part the animal rights people don't want to hear. There's 3 types of fur, coyote fur in North America. Eastern, which is found from basically the Great Lakes along the eastern side of North America. Semi-heavy, which is found everywhere else pretty much in the States. And the Western heavy, which is found in Western Canada. Okay. Easterns are dark colored, a lot of black in them and dark browns. Have really coarse fur. It's not really smooth. Semi-heavies live in those warm climates, Texas and, even like Oklahoma, Kansas, all the way up into South Dakota. And they don't have that thick, luxurious coat. The Western heavies, though, have those pale colors. They're nice silvers and light browns, and they grow real silky and fullest fur. Only the Western heavy coyotes are used in Canada Goose jackets. Western Canada almost exclusively uses nothing but the Ram Power Snare. So when the anti-fur groups show you pictures of a coyote in a trap full of mud and looks like crap, ask yourself, first of all, is that picture real? Probably not, but if it is, what type of coyote is that? In every single case of every single trap coyote that I've ever seen, and they're saying this is your coyote jacket. It's a semi-heavy or an eastern coyote. Western coyotes are harvested only in winter, and we get winter up here. We're in the snow. You don't see them covered in mud, and you don't see grass, okay? Number two, they don't struggle. They just fall asleep and fall over dead, okay? Those warmer climates near populated centers is where those pictures come from, where the trappers have to use these. The coyote trap in wet dirt, it doesn't take long to get them covered in mud and looks like horrible. These traps are used when your dog Fluffy goes out for a stroll by itself. We can release them unharmed. If you don't like to see these used, keep your pets where they belong, in your yard. That's another example how trappers take extra care to make sure no animals get hurt. All trappers wish they could use a power snare for coyotes, but your animals say that we can't use them because we don't want to kill your animals. Now, on to the propaganda presented by anti-fur groups. You've all heard that or seen the one about the animals being skinned alive. That video is one of the most grossest, vile, and disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. I want to make one thing absolutely clear. No animals are skinned alive. Ever. 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 No exceptions. Ever. Hope that clears that up. Even more troubling than that, though, is the response received from PETA. When we asked for the source of that video, so we as trappers insist in charging, convicting, and shutting down that practice, right? No one, not a single person or entity has been identified, investigated, or charged. How? Why? Now, if PETA really want to help, don't you think they'd run to the nearest police station as soon as they took that video? They won't release the video, the origin, or anything, claiming they don't want to give up their source. Are you kidding me? Their source? Well, just stopping it. Wait, this makes sense now. Looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck. It's a duck. This is PETA video just like Greenpeace from the 1980s. They staged it so they have a new boogeyman to drum up donations. Now who's the real murderers? Okay, wait, there's more. Just like a freaking bad infomercial. You ever seen the picture of that farmed fox? It's so bloated just so you can have its fur. You can't even see its eyes barely. Again, no response. Where did it come from? What farm did it come from? Back to the duck scenario. Farm fox can be legally bought in exotic pet stores. My belief, they bought their own fox. Now this is the part that's truly disturbing in this. The only way you can make an animal that bloated is to pump it full of water. I've seen where cats... Come here, kitty. This one's a female. But I've seen where cats, right here between the shoulders, after they get neutered, they give them a shot of water there so that they don't get dehydrated after their operation. It looks like a camel walking around. The thing floats back and forth, and it's a goofy look for a day, and then the water goes in. The only way that they could have got a fox to look like that is to pump its face so full of water that it completely sealed off its eyes and everything. Put it in a cage. Take the picture. We need our donations. Those are the true freaking evil people on the planet, not us. Okay, it doesn't take much searching. Just go to any credible news site. You can find out that PETA has routinely illegally entered yards, stole people's pets, taken them, and euthanized them minutes later. Find out another one. 97% of the animals taken into their shelters are killed. Now, this group has nothing to do with helping animals. They're just lying, thieving criminals. All for donations. And the stunts. The mainstream media even got sick and tired of them, and now they have to go in more and more outrageous stunts just to get noticed. All for donations. So, this rant is a long time in coming, but really tipped it off was the other day, two PETA people dressed up in RCMP, that's Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mounties. The Red Surge, calling themselves the Fashion Police, and handed out tickets to people wearing fur, wool, leather, or any other animal product. These two did this in Regina, Saskatchewan on Wednesday, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan on Thursday. Previous posts on her Facebook page showed that she's been all across Canada from Montreal to Vancouver protesting everything from oil to fur. Paid protester, if you ask me. The part that shocked me was that these two people were giving tickets for wearing animal products while they themselves were wearing felt hats, which are made from beaver, rabbit, or wool, and leather gloves, belt, and boots. They claim it's vegan leather, plastic, made from oil. Anyway, I personally messaged one of them, thanked her for supporting the fur industry by wearing a fur hat. I was met with a resounding, "They're made of felt." My jaw dropped, like, you can't be this naive and dumb, can you? Evidently they are. Wearing fur and leather while protesting fur and leather. So, of course, in typical anti-fur fashion, I was called names and belittled. So, as an active trapper in my local trapping association, every year we bring forth resolutions to the government for changes we wish to see, in our regulations. Just one example, this year, the coyote is open season right now. We'd like to see him back and have a season reinstated. Open season was declared because there's just so many of them overpopulated. However, we believe the coyote should not be killed in the summer months. It orphans pups, and it's a waste of a good animal. Their fur is only good in the winter. The pups can survive on their own at that time. Guys, ranchers, and whatnot, protecting their livestock, you can still control coyotes, no problem. But average citizens, no more killing coyotes during the summer. So that's just one example of what we're doing. We have a whole bunch, but that's just one, just to give everybody an example of what we're doing out there. So during these votes, resolutions, meetings with wildlife managers, one group is always absent: the anti-fur groups. They care so much about the animals, shouldn't they be there? Nah, there's no fanfare, there's no TV, there's no commercials, no donations to muster up. So we as the trappers continue to make trapping better and better. They continue to fleece people for donations. So like I said, there's no quick sound bites, no catchy slogans, but I hope you learned a little bit about trapping, clear up some of the misconceptions about it. If anybody wants to talk, feel free, join the Saskatchewan Trappers Association Facebook page. Myself and a few other trappers would be more than happy to talk about trapping and, anything like that. No threats, no name calling, nothing illegal, no spam. Otherwise, she's open and talk whatever you want. If you really want to help the animals, go down to your local shelter and volunteer your time or money there. Support groups that enhance wildlife habitat, like Ducks Unlimited, for example. Better yet, take a trapping course, learn to trap. Study the environment and learn for yourself from the real world rather than websites and Facebook posts that are biased. Buy and wear fur, okay? Every time you do, know that you're helping the wildlife populations, not hurting them, okay? So I hope that clears up a few things. Any questions, any comments, please don't hesitate. But anybody who's on the fence or doesn't quite know a little bit about trapping, show them this. I know it's not sexy and exciting, but it's got a little bit of information in there that hopefully you can take away something out of it. Anyway, happy trapping. Take care out there.